All right, guys, we're going to start a new project here. One of the first things I want to talk about before you even start, something I want you to spend time in today, is that I want to show you how to put together what I call them a reference page. Some people like to call them mood pages. I prefer the word reference. It's just a term that I've been associated with, and these are really fantastic. So, what part of our assignment, if we come back up here to the blog, okay, is that we're doing a vehicle assignment. It's going to be a flying vehicle that can fly, float, dive, swim, or hover. Okay, so you have a couple different variations. Just stay simple. Don't get too complicated. Wait, let me say it again because I know someone's going to do something. Stay simple. Don't get too complicated. Just stay really, this is a fun assignment if you just go through it. It doesn't have to be, if you're a guy that's into mechs and you want to have this thing loaded with weapons, that's fine. You can do that. If you want to do something that's more stylistic, that might be like a vehicle you would see on an animated feature, you could go into some form of style. It doesn't matter as long as the construction and the perspective is there. First thing I want to go over with you guys, I put a little link right here for you on the assignment. It's called concept ships. So what we need to do is we need to gather a reference page. The great thing about gathering a reference page is these are bits of information that are going to guide you along in your design process. And also, those of you, when you leave here and you're working professionally for a client, I send them my reference pages all the time. So when I start working on a project for somebody, one of the first things that I do is I have these very nice laid out pages in Photoshop with all the reference, and I send them to them because sometimes they see something that they haven't seen before, and it gives them what I call a stepping stone or a platform to jump off of and move towards in terms of the overall design process. So this is how you make your reference page, okay? A great site for any type of ships is concept ships. In fact, if you guys do really nice drawings and if you paint them up and they look great, you could submit your work here to concept ships. This is one of my favorite sites of all time. It's connected to a couple other, hold on, there's a submit your artwork sign right there. Okay, and then if I scroll down here, so they also have concept robots, concept vehicles, tanks. It's, everything you could think of. And if you scroll down here, these are just, illustrations done from artists from all over the world, which is really fantastic. And the fact that you're going to get to access this, some of this work is done in 3D. Okay, it's modeled in 3D. If you have an interest in creating something like this, you can take a Maya class here. That's a couple of the first assignments we get into. Deal with that. But everything you're looking at here, it's not always warlike. A lot of it has this sort of general sci-fi theme to it. It's coming up with ideas of what ships look like, but going through all this work, it's great reference page. In fact, I really like this image right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this, I'm going to drag it over. I created a folder here called New Project. Close it down. Okay. I'm going to scroll through here. Oh, that's a cool ship. Looks like a futuristic car. Okay. So you can see look at this. You got a side view, rear view. You can see we're even doing this type of ship illustration crosses over into what we call like product design, dealing with automotive design. It's all just good design. So I hate it every now and then I get a student that goes, I hate drawing mechs. Okay, well, we're not necessarily drawing a mech. It's a ship, and a ship can have different backgrounds and terminology. In fact, I thought this is pretty cool right here. I was actually looking for this the other day. There is a group of illustrators that work just for NASA. There's a group that you can get into that's approved by NASA, and then you can come up with ideas like this, concepts on what illustrations might look like in the future for space travel and traveling to other planets and so on. Okay, all right. I don't know what all that is, but if you just go through here, I think this one here is by Rob Rubel. Yeah, he's a really talented guy. Used to be a Disney artist. Really great painter, great sense of mood and light. Fantastic work. Now look at that. You might look at that and be like, hey, I like that idea with the thrust and that. That was something that was modeled in 3D, and then the artist went over it and they painted back on top of it. There's nothing wrong with doing that. In fact, in a lot of these, you will notice what I call kit bashing. Kit bashing is where you have a design that was made, and they might use numerous photos blended on top of each other in Photoshop and then blend the whole thing together. That's the way that a lot of conceptual artists work right now. So if you have that ability to draw, design, and then blend photos together, you can get into this type of work as well. Okay, so I just want to show you this site. This right here is just 1 month. Okay, so as I scroll down here, let me get all the way to the bottom. Oh, look at that. Look familiar? Okay. I wonder if people have been they've been releasing some of the art for the new Star Wars out. I don't want to see it though. I don't want to get any spoilers. So anyway, if you scroll down here and you look, that was just for March, and you have all these other months and all these other years all the way back to 2007. It's a pretty fantastic site. Okay, another great site to gather reference from. Right? If we just go to Google, it's okay. The one thing I don't like about Google is that if I type in concept ships, and then if I go under images, the one thing I don't like is sometimes I get images that are low res, and so I might click on something and I might like a particular design. Like that's a pretty cool looking ship right here. Okay, once I scroll up to it, actually that's pretty cool too. It's like a giant, let's just grab that one just for sakes here. So I'm going to click this and come over here, swipe it, drop it down. Okay, and I forgot it opened up a new one. I'm used to my Mac, right? Just go back on a window, but here it's doing the opposite. And I saw another, that's a cool ship right there too. I like that angle in there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab that guy here. Actually, let me see if I click to the main. When I click to the main page, I get the high-res version, which some of you know that, some of you don't, because you guys click and then you grab all the small res versions. Okay, so all right, I'm already building up, you know, a cool little library. That's a cool little ship. I like the angle designs in that, so I'm going to grab that guy. Okay. Let's close. Let's go back here. I saw another one. That one's pretty cool too. Okay. There. So I have these. That's by the Amazing Scott Robertson. Let's grab that one, pull it over here. So now that I'm done with that, another site that's really fantastic outside of using the general blog is Pinterest. Okay. Without a doubt, I've just become a total addict to Pinterest when I have the time to get on there. Why is it not opening? Hold on. Let me close this. Let's try that again. All right, and I can't get it to open. All right, so why won't you open? Okay, for some reason I can't get it to open, so I'm going to go back here and just go to Pinterest this way. All right, here's the great thing about Pinterest. I was actually on it last night grabbing reference. Okay. It's so easy to find great work on here under a special category, especially dealing with art. All I have to come up here is come up to the top of my search engine and just say, let's say I did flying ships. Okay, and if I hit enter, it does a search for me. And the great thing about Pinterest, guys, is that sometimes it's a little literal. So I said ship, so it's going to look for like realistic ships right now. But then I could go back and I could just adjust my search. So if I type in concept ships, okay, and I look back, I'm going to get just a lot of great feedback right here. And most of these are going to be really high res. Okay, so look, when I click, see how large that is? I have a really good quality image. That's the thing I love about Pinterest that I hate about Google, is a lot of times in Google you're getting a really small truncated image that's been shrunk down on a blog site or a website. And here I could find the same images, but they're a lot larger. Okay, so if you go through, if you're not a member of Pinterest, you should absolutely be a member. It's just a fantastic site because there's a lot of fine art painters that I like, and I'll look up here. I find samples for their work. The other day I saw work from a couple artists that I'd never even seen before. That somebody in it was work from Alfonso Mucha, right? And it was somebody had posted work in Czechoslovakia, which is the homeland country, okay, that lived in Czechoslovakia, that had access to a gallery or collection and took a picture. I've never even seen it, and I found it on Pinterest. It was that easy, okay? So there's some great concepts up here. I would highly recommend do something that's new. Don't do something that you've already seen before that you know. Like, don't do a stealth fighter. We all know what a stealth fighter looks like. We want to push our design process past that, okay? All right, now I'm going to close this information, right? What I'm going to do is let me show you real quick in Sketchbook Pro, if I want to come over here, how would I go about making a rough page, okay? So look, here's my piece of paper. If I go under image, actually right here under file, and I go into add image, and then I'm going to find the folder that I created on my desktop. I click desktop here, and I put new project. So look, now I can just select an image, hit open, and voila, I have this image. Now, Sketchbook Pro is a little different. I have to come over here, and I can scale the image down. I move it. I'm going to place this image right here. Boom, that's done. I'm going to come back over here again. I'm going to go to File. Let's go to Add Image. This shouldn't take you more than just a couple minutes. Hit Open. There's my next image. I'm going to scale it down a little bit. I'm going to put this guy right in here. Okay, deselect. If you want to put things on layers, you can. Right now in Sketchbook Pro, it's putting everything on one page for me, right? So I'm going to come back over here. Let's do File again. Let's go to Add Image. And let's place this guy in here. Open. So I like to scale them down and just get things to fit where I can. You can overlap them a little bit. Sometimes that's a great thing about working on layers, that if I copy that guy right now and I don't want to worry about, I want to have a little bit more power to adjust, I can go to a different layer. I can now, oops, didn't mean to scale him. I could bring him up, move him in. I can scale him to fit a little bit more. And you'll notice I have all this excess area right here in the front. I can now select that and I can delete that, and then I could transform. Now, I can't transform by Command T in Sketchbook Pro. That's my tool option. It's different. In Sketchbook Pro, I just have to draw a box, hitting the marquee, and then I scale this way. It just takes a little bit of getting used to. If you're used to Photoshop, that's fine. I like to use both. Okay. File. Let me just finish this up real quick. Add image. Let's. I'm going to have that ship right there open. Okay. Oops. Didn't mean to rotate. There we go. I wanted to move him over just a little bit. Right in there. Let me scale him down a little. Okay. And then File. Let's do Add Image again. Okay. I think I only have a couple more. Look at these last two here. Scale this guy down. And get him up over here. A little bit larger. Okay. And then let's do it again. File. Add Image. And oops, open. There we go. I'm going to move this down. Okay. That's it. Now I have my first reference page. I have a page of great art and reference from other people, and I can use as stepping stones. And what I like, the reason why I like to do this so much is I can now take a look at these images. Let me combine these. Let me tell that I'm going to get this guy to drop layer, go down below. All right, merge down. So now it's all on one page. And the one thing I like about whether it's Photoshop or using this in Sketchbook Pro is now I have that page and I could close it, and then I could draw on another layer and I can go back and look at my reference, okay? That's really important. Now some of you might have Pure Ref at home, Pure Reference. That's the icon that allows you to drop the images in and then work. If you don't have Pure Reference, you can find it online. Just look up Pure Reference. You can download it. This is how it works. Is I just take a bunch of artwork that I like, I drop it in the Pure Reference icon, and look at that. See what it just did? Is it actually opened up a file with all the images there. Then all I have to do is I touch an image that I want to see, and then I can scan into it, and that's it. And then I can move around like that. So I can look at that reference, I can look at that reference, I can zoom in, look at that reference. See how cool that is? But the cool thing about Pure Ref is that it's sitting on top of my work right now. Do you see that? So I can, like, if you have dual monitors, it's awesome. At home, I have a dual monitor that sits up here. I put it up on the top, and it's just nothing big. It's like a $100 cheapie, right? I got at Costco, and then I can look at my references I'm working. I'm just looking up as I'm drawing on the monitor below. Okay, that's really convenient. So to get rid of Pure Reference, you right-click on it, just hit Close. I prefer to work like this, where I look at my reference. I like to print it out to have it handy to me. Okay, because then what I'm looking for right now is I'm looking for shapes. I'm looking for design sensibilities that these artists figured out. Let me explain a couple to you on a draw over on top of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this resolution down a little bit like this. I'm going to come over here, add a layer up on top, and now this way I can come in here and I'm going to draw on top of this. I'm going to talk about a couple great design principles. When you look at good art that inspires you, there are little principles to pick up, and let me show you a couple. Okay, one thing that's happening in here is look at the tilt that's there. Okay, instead of having an object that looks like this, that's at a 90-degree angle, we've talked about 90s before, especially in a lot of my other classes. What do 90-degree angles do? Have you ever heard of the old 50s term, don't be a square? Okay, that's where that sort of comes from. 90 degrees is boring. 90-degree angles kill designs. Okay, there's nothing in a 90. Houses are built at a 90. Okay, perfect structures are built at 90s. Okay, to have a little bit of character into something, you want to be able to throw a tilt in. So here's a good basic design principle right here from the beginning, is I like to look at these. I have, when in my sketchbook, I come up with these little theories, okay, that I apply to when I'm drawing. One of them has to deal with acute and obtuse angles. By tilting an angle like this, I've now created what's called an obtuse and acute angle in my design sensibility. So my obtuse angle is going to be greater right here than 90, and my acute angle on this other side is going to be less than 90. That's going to work for me a lot more in my design. In fact, if I come into here and if I start looking at the rest of this design, you'll start to notice these little angular cuts and curves that are being implemented into part of that design process, okay? And then I call part of this working with like trapezoids, working with shapes that have acute and 90-degree angles, and acute and obtuse angles inside them. What am I avoiding right now? Am I drawing this? No, that's bad. That's not going to look good. That's going to have a boring outcome of my design. What's going to look nice is if I just look in here and look at the way they're playing with shapes. Okay, they have angles offset, they have angles going this way, they have these sort of various shaped angles in here. There's lots of cool angles in here. They are not 90 degrees. So that is, if I were to make a little note to myself of what's happening in here, I'd say not 90, and then I would say acute, okay, and then also obtuse angles. That's a huge step for you to apply in your design process, right? I'm going to come over here, take a look at what they're doing, okay? Let's divide up the shapes in here. Okay, let's see what we have here. Where's the cockpit? Is the cockpit in the middle of the drawing? No, the cockpit has been pushed back like this. Why has it been pushed back? Because if it's in the middle, it's going to look very plain and too centered. So they pushed it way to the back. Look at the stretch of this coming forward like this, the front. Okay. When you think of sports cars, some of the older sports cars used to have these really long forward engine compartments that had big V8s and V12s in them. Now, some of the race cars have switched it, like Ferraris. They put the engine in the back and the driver's a little close up. But you see what I'm getting at? By getting this really large sort of Cadillac or muscle car feel in here and stretching that front hood, it's applying more to the design. Another thing that's happening in here is, I'm going to erase some of my lines real quickly here, is that they are breaking the silhouette shape. So they have an overall silhouette shape that's taking place in the design. Now they're coming out and they're breaking it. How do we break it? By putting a fin that pops out here. By having another element that not only pops out from the side of the body, okay, here, just like this one is and this one is, it also goes to the back, and then we have another little wing guy that pops out, okay? So getting elements to pop out. So if I come over here and I were to write notes looking at this. Now, I don't write the notes anymore because I do it up here. I look at something, I find the things I like, but this is how you analyze your reference. I was making a comment yesterday in my environment sketching class. I had a student turn a piece into me. I could tell it was his first freaking drawing because the reference was horrible. The house didn't look like a mansion. I could tell he hadn't looked at a mansion and inferred the reference to the drawing. Okay, the perspective was off. It was a crap drawing because I could tell it had just been done one time. This is what makes you a good designer and a good artist, is being able to being able to get in and look at good art and translate the information that's taking place. My notes on this one would be one. So I'd put a little note here. I'd be one to offset. Okay, so here's the offset angle. Throwing that cockpit all the way to one side or the other side. How else do they offset? They have a much larger front end. Okay, how else do they offset? Maybe it's coming over here and throwing in a larger shape up on the top and then having these be angled shapes. You know, whatever you want to look at or interpret from the design that influences you. Another thing that they did is silhouette. Silhouette shape. They broke the silhouette shape of the vehicle by having fins on there. That does a lot for the design. So if I turn this off and I look, that's key. Okay, let's come over here. Let's take a look at this guy right here. All right, this is boy, that's a fun design. I really like that a lot. I like this round area up in the front, and then I love the little wings. Now, when you first look at that, does it make you feel like you're looking at a particular, what's your read off of that? First feels.
Motorcycle with a really big kick.
Wasn't really what I was going for, but no, motorcycle with big kicks, yeah. I don't know how you got that, but okay.
He's going literal.
Going literal. Well, when I first looked at it, it made me think of like a wasp or a fly that's landed. It feels very bug-like. Okay? That's another great approach, is to look at animals or bugs that exist. And you take parts of their anatomy or their exoskeletons or their heads, and then you start to incorporate that into part of your design process. Okay? So how does this look like a bug to me? Is that bugs tend to have very large head shapes. That reminds me of like a bug. It's a very large head shape. Then it has these sort of, we just drew a bug in our last assignment. See what the feet are doing? They're doing that same type of angle that like a bug has. Okay. Then as we branch off from that, now this has a jet engine, obviously, to match the time period or to emphasize the design of what's going to happen, right? Okay. So what if I came over here and I did this? And made it look like it had, do you see how bug shaped that is? Once I get in here and I start to do that, do you see how that's breaking that into like a bug shape? Okay, that's another really important aspect of design, is that obviously this isn't going to have flying wings and be taken seriously, right? So we're going to erase the wings. We're going to replace that with something that would be more current, like a jet engine. Okay, and then that incorporates in design. But the large head shape. So here, when I look at this, my little lesson learned is nature, okay, and bugs, okay, because that's sort of being mimicked there, okay. All right, let's take a look at this guy here. What little lesson would I learn from this? Right from the beginning, the first thing I noticed was this, that huge angle, off tilt, okay. Contrapposta, does anyone know what that is? You've all had figure drawing. It's when you draw the figure, you don't want to draw the figure like this, straight, with all the horizontals going across. It's boring. Contrapposta is when we have an adjustment and axes lines between the hip and the upper body. And what happens is when we turn our hips like this, if you can see me banking here, like I'm a Vogue model, right? My hips are now going down like this. To counteract that, our human body, the body will adjust, and now my shoulder is going in the opposite direction. So whenever I turn the other one the other way, the other line will move the opposite way. These are axes lines that always adjust each other. That's actually part of our body's mechanism for balance. When I was in high school, I was a wrestler, and my coach taught us about understanding how axes lines transfer on somebody's weight. So if we go up and tap somebody on the shoulder, their body turns this way, their hips adjust to counter angle for their movement of their shoulders, and then that's when you would sneak in and attack, right? So what I'm getting at is that if I have this counter angle here in my design, right, coming in and then throwing another angle going in the opposite direction would be in my best interest, okay? So that's good design right there, having the ship like this, and then coming in and having other angles that are countering that key angle is going to be really important. So for this little notation, I might write in here counter angle. Okay. All right. Now let's take a look at this. I grabbed this piece because I like the some of the angular designs that were in here. I thought they were pretty interesting. How this line comes up, and then it comes down, and it does this. Okay. Do you see that? So once again, here, look at what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with angles that are not in 90-degree formats. They're not 45s. They're not 90s. These are tending to be either acute or sort of obtuse. That is greater than 90. That's a little close to a 90, but that's okay. That's not bad. But then when I look in the rest of this, this ship sort of has a chiseled feel to it. Do you see that? Well, that's great. That if that, you know, that might be the art direction of the particular culture that flies that ship. And you're like, what is he talking about, the art direction? Well, if you're working on a game and you have to design the protagonist and the antagonist, right? You're going to have to think about what the good guys, what their background is, what their buildings look like. And then when you get to the bad guys, you're going to have to think about what their background is. Are they from another planet? Are all their buildings chiseled shape? So if I was going to draw that ship So that gives me right there just that little stepping stone. I'm going to put down right down here. That might help me to think about the ship that I'm designing. Is it for a good guy or a bad guy? Because the shape language might be different. This doesn't really look like a ship that I would assimilate with a good guy. Why? Because of all the angles in it. They make me feel like they're little butcher knives in there. There's little points in here. There's these angles. It feels like some type of a Celtic, tool that would be used to like kill people. Okay, there's lots of little angles in there. Okay, so I would write that down. I would write down the angles. So I make little comments there. Oops. Let me move over here. Let's take a look at this guy. What I really liked about this guy, as soon as I saw that image, was the scale that's taking place here. Look at the scale. Look at how they decided to put the cockpit up here in the very top. And then you have this huge front end. Okay, do you know what that mimics to me? Where they got that from, anyone? It's how all your goods were brought here that are made in China. A ship. It looks like a big giant ship. Have you ever stood right in front of a big giant freighter ship? They're enormous and you're like that big and they're like so huge in scale. Okay, so to mimic the scale, what he did is he put little indications of other ships around here that shows you how big this thing is. And then by coming up here and putting like the little captain's area right in here, and then look at how he broke the silhouette. He has that wing, he has another wing here, okay, another wing here, something here, there's something popping out here. See, he's finding ways to break out of that large ship shape. If he did not have all of these, if I came into the drawing, let's just do it real quick. Let's turn this up all the way. It's a wonderful illustration, by the way. Okay, but if I were to come over here and say, let's go to my airbrush here, and if I were to say, all right, where's my airbrush option? Like nothing's coming out. And size, there we go, flow. So now if I were to come over here and do this, if I take away all those wings and those other elements, what do we have? It's boring. See how important it is to break the silhouette on an object and get those other elements to pop out of there? With all that gone, it's just like a big round balloon. There's nothing really there. If I go back and I Command Z and I take that stuff off, and incorporate that in my design process, it's huge. So once again, down here on this guy, what we're seeing is we're number one, we're breaking the silhouette. Okay, hold on a minute here. Where's my? There it is. So we're breaking silhouette, and then we also, when you look at a lot of those angles that are in there, you also have. I'm going to put angled edges. Okay, he has lots of angles that are banking in there, some curves. More angles, okay, incorporating. He's not doing this. That's not the fin in there. That is one of the most boring shapes. That's what we call a primitive shape. You can't design with that. Okay, with that being said, after you look at that page now, you should have a substantial amount of notes to understand how to proceed forward. So this is what I do, is I turn that off. I'm going to come over here. I can look at my notes when I want to, and this is where I get in there and I start having fun. So I close my reference, and I'm going to start sketching here. Now here's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to look at my reference. How did they start? Without that reference, you guys might start like this. I'm making, oops. You might say, oh, I'm making a ship. And the first thing you started with in this was what? A horizontal line going right across. Horizontal lines lead to 90-degree angles. And when they're plumb like that, that looks boring. When I look at that reference, the first thing I was inspired by was that. Because I saw people coming in doing that really quickly, then branching off of it and putting stuff like, that might be the front, this could be like part of a canopy, and then I might come in here, I might have a little bit of a wing in here. Now don't go too crazy, because remember, you're going to have to draw this turn 3/4. Keep it simple, but just think about what some of the base mass shapes are. That's all I have to do like that, is I have to get these together. Now, The great thing I was telling you about with Sketchbook Pro is if I come along and to me there's two types of silhouettes. Okay? Let me draw another one here and I'll show you the difference. So I'm going to start with a line again. I want to start with some of the angled shapes that I saw before. I'm going to try to break the planes where I have little angles that come out here. That might be front. Maybe something comes out here a little bit more. Okay, let's just say that's my next shape. Okay. Now here's a cool thing about Sketchbook Pro is that if I come over and I grab the bucket tool and I have my color, now right there, you see what happened? It filled outside of the line. Everyone see that? It did that because my line wasn't connected there. So if I come back with my brush and if you quickly go over and just get in the habit of making some hard edge lines, after you make a rough silhouette like this, you can quickly come in here and you can fill it. I'm just using blue. You could use black. You see that? I touched that like 4 times and it's filled. Okay? There it is. So I have a rough silhouette. Then I could come back in with a big marker wedge and I could finish up any little loose ends. That's a silhouette shape. The great thing about a silhouette shape is it allows me to see the angles of what's happening in the ship without seeing any of the details. When I see details, my eye gets fixated to the details. This allows me then to come in here and say, hey, maybe this should go this way. What if I had a line that went this way and then curved in here? And I could start making lots of little changes. Okay, I don't like that one, by the way. I'm just doing it really fast. Another option that you can do that I prefer to do, and I don't mind if you guys do this, it also deals with silhouettes, is that we're going to create another layer here, okay? Drop that layer underneath, come to your airbrush tool, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in, oops, I didn't mean to go that dark there. I'm just going to come in pretty lightly, and I'm just going to put down, man, why is that? Hold on. Let me adjust the airbrush tool. I pushed up the flow on it before. There we go. So now I can come in with my airbrush, and I'm basically going to airbrush a base value underneath. Now, that's not coming out the way that I want it to look, so what I need to do, come to my color picker here, and I'm going to, where that color pops up, I'm in the purest. I'm going to drop down here to a lighter blue of it. Now as I airbrush that, it can only go so dark. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to airbrush that value underneath. And what that's going to do is it allows me to then come in and see what's happening with the silhouette. I can come in, I can erase a couple edges, and guess what? That's silhouette number 1. I prefer to work like that because I've done tons of other silhouettes. Sometimes in my sketchbook I do silhouettes, but right there I have a ship. Now I can take that ship and I can copy and paste it, draw on top of it, work from there, go back, look at my reference, do a couple more. So if, say I want to do a couple more, let's do another one really fast and then we'll wrap this up. So my next one, maybe what I like to do is look at the other design I did and go in the opposite direction sometimes. What if I keep that same shape, but now I put a curve in it somehow? So let's say I come over here and I do this. I got that curve. Maybe I have more of an underbelly curve there. And then maybe I decide to curve the wing going maybe the opposite direction a little bit. Okay. And for some reason I thought it'd be cool to have maybe like another little guy out there. Maybe I decide to look, I look at my reference, I decide there might be like a little thruster thing or something there. Okay. All right, so that's one. And then, oops, oh, come on. Sorry, the recorder is slowing down my machine. As you can see, I'm hands-free and it's still spinning. There it goes. Like that is a magic trick. It's what happens when all the memory gets eaten up. There we go. I meant to go to move and I hit rotate. Now I might look at that and be like, okay, I have a lot of hard edges. What if I go very round? What if I start with this type of shape in here and then put a little fin coming off of that guy, and maybe he looks a little different. Maybe he has like a little light or something in here. So here's getting into something a little bit more stylized. Okay. Don't go into too much detail. Just put some basics in there, some linear indication. Right? There's another ship. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back under here. Let's go to the airbrush tool. I'm going to go to a lighter value. And now I can come back under and I can just put a little bit of the values underneath there. So if you decide to do more of a linear silhouette, that's fine. I still want you to do a whole page of these. And what do I mean by page? I know I'm going to have someone that's going to go, how many is a page? How many numbers? It's as many that it takes you to feel like you are getting the design out. Okay? I just fill a whole page. So, I mean, I just did 3 of these. And that's not a page to me whatsoever. I would fill up the whole entire page. I actually like this last design I did. It put me in a whole nother direction. I like the contours. I like the angles of that ship. Okay? So the great thing about looking at your rough little silhouette line like this is, let me come out here, scale down. See, as I can look at what the silhouettes look like. I would just keep going and keep moving into the opposite direction. One of the things I do in my sketchbook all the time is I look at a drawing like this, and then I go in the opposite direction. So here I've been going at angles. So what happens if I pitch an angle going in the opposite direction like that? If you want to do an under sketch like this, just real quick, and there's never a bad design. You might start with this and then realize like, oh, that's really cool. This might be like more of a vertical ship somehow. And I have something else I can work from. I just rough that out really quick. Okay? There's nothing wrong with that. Once I start with that rough drawing, come over and do another one really fast. Then you come back in on top of that. Okay, now I made a mistake here. I did that on the tone layer, but that's okay. I can always select it, copy and paste. Okay, but now you can come back. I was drawing with a light blue. If I come back with a darker blue, I can start putting some more information on here. Just very light. I'm just basically going over part of my line that was there, making some adjustments that weren't in my original sketch. And what's cool about that is, look, I have a whole different type of ship now that I never thought I would sort of get into. Actually, I like that one a lot too, because it feels different. You see that? It's a different type of ship. So I want you to take a look at reference, go into these, have fun, come up with some good ideas. I want to walk around, check off your work that's due today. Okay? So that, another design. When I'm done, I spend 45 minutes into this. I'll have a whole page of designs. Sit, have fun with it. Don't go too complicated. What do I mean by going too complicated? A lot of you guys are just learning how to draw, and you're learning how to draw and turn shapes at angles. Don't be getting into tons of like round jet engines and elliptical shapes. Stay simple. Stay blocky. There's nothing wrong with that. But avoid 90 degrees. Okay, have fun. All right, I'm going to end the demo right there so I can render it out. I'll put it up on the blog for you. All right, and remember, if you ever get stuck, what you do is you just come back here, close down your images, right? Take a look at your reference. Find something new in your reference that you didn't see before, or get more reference, okay? So I want you to do, for the rest of today, I want you to go spend the rest of today's class getting reference here, okay? I want you to go out concept ships, look around, find ships that you like, find something that's stylized, whatever it might be, and get that reference, and I want you to put it together on a page so you have it ready. I want to be able to see it, okay? Because, in fact, I might even just ask you to print it out and bring it to the... In fact, let's just do that just to make things simple. I want you to print out your reference and bring it to the next class. I want to see that you did that. That's your homework between now and Thursday, which isn't just like, ooh, whopping 30 minutes of work, if that, even if that, okay? This is the most... Do you see how important this is right here? This gives me what I call stepping stones. Every artist and good designer needs stepping stones to work with. You need to be given a direction to go in. It's the same principle. Let me give you this example. When you're working on a film at DreamWorks, and you're about to start working on it, your art director is going to walk in the room and they're going to tell you, these are the styles we're going for. We want to have a little bit of Edgar Payne. We want to have a little bit of Monet or Cezanne in terms of color. We want to have the design work of, and they'll mention, of shapes like N.C. Wyeth, lots of angled and 8-shaped compositions, right? Well, guess what? You have to go look at those works and you have to bring those into the story that you're given. That's your task, is being able to interpret those differences. It's the same thing here. Nothing changes. So everything I'm showing you here is the same thing you'd be doing once you're working in either a game studio or in anywhere in the industry. They're going to ask you to interpolate these events, okay, and bring them forward. All right. So talk to you guys soon. Let me end the demo.